How's she going? Well, we have something interesting on the workbench today. I thought I'd show the world. We have here a ZF transmission out of a early 90s Bmw 5 Series V8. It's a V8 car with a big bell housing. I've seen a bunch of these out of the inline 6 cars, but yeah, I haven't really seen too many V8 manual transmissions. Most people around here buy automatic. And yeah, it's pretty skookum inside. Those are some decent looking gears. And look at that reverse gear. That's the best looking reverse gear I've seen yet. I've only really had like smaller front wheel drive transmissions apart before, but yeah, this thing's looking pretty awesome. So what happened here was the owner was changing the seal, and he drilled it and punched it, and anyway, he didn't realize he was damaging the bearing on the other end, the input shaft bearing. So this is what it took to get to that. I've got a brand new one right there we're gonna put in. A lot of little parts fell out. I gotta figure out how that goes in to the selector. This part here, they were kind of sitting inside of that. So it's not impossible. You don't really need any special tools to get it apart. I separated the case using a few pry bars, pushed down with my elbows, and then good old air chisel. And yeah, I looked at the shaft. That's hard as shit. You're never gonna damage that, and I didn't put a scratch on it. And I air chiseled on it for a good 10 minutes to get that pushed out of there. That's quite a squeeze to get apart. Now, putting it back together, I probably will have to build a jig off my workbench and bolt that down so that I can press it back in place. And yeah, lots of fun. Okay, so when this is going back together, you have to pop this, that's not a detent pin, but it's a little spring pin that rubs on that for this bottom shift selector fork. You gotta put that in there. So one suggestion I'm gonna make is take a little bit of material off the inside of your new bearing, and that way this shaft will press in there a little bit easier. I mean, don't take too much. You still want it to be a press fit, but it doesn't need to press as hard as the original one came off there. Frig. Like it, you know, it took quite a bit of effort to get out, and you hurt the bearing. So I like this a lot better. And when you're pressing that down in there, this is really the only special tool I've had to build so far. It's just a piece of pipe that fits over the shaft and up to there, and it sits on the other side of the bearing, so you're just pushing on that inner race. So we're gonna assemble this onto there and put her together. Okay, I wrapped some electrical tape around there to kind of hold the gears all together. Be really careful you don't damage the bearing for this one. I had to kind of spin it a little bit just to make sure everything was free, because everything's kind of heavy when you're putting it together with one hand. And I've got that shift fork sort of in place. It's not ready to line the pins up yet, but it will be once I press that down in there. So I have my special tool in place, which is just a piece of pipe that fits over the shaft and onto the bearing. And my dog's interested here in something. Yeah, so we're gonna press that that shaft down and hope for the best. All right, it's the next morning. I came up with a little plan to hold the the doohickey in place. I put some silicone on either end of it and let that dry overnight, because that thing just flops around and falls down in the case, and you have to concentrate on pressing the bearing down onto the shaft and everything else going on before your silicone dries. So I figured that would be a reasonable thing to do, and that little bit of silicone will not cause an issue. Most of it will probably stay on there. It's the right stuff. Really, really good sealant. Be about the only thing you should use. Careful with your dog. Yeah. So we'll put her together. There's the parts left and the tools I've used so far. Well, that was a bit tricky. Getting everything lined up properly with the shift rod. It was difficult. First time I clamped it down, the rod was jammed all the way down. So you have to hold this in kind of the neutral position where it's at now while you're lowering the case down. And I used just some screwdrivers and a little pick to kind of feel in there and move the forks to where the proper position was, and then kind of went over to the other side and started screwing in the pin, and that seemed to work. It's not easy. I don't know what kind of tools you could make to make that job easier. I'm not too sure. I think my little trick of gluing that lever on the other forks was smart, because that was, I don't know how that was going to happen otherwise. And yeah, definitely take some material off the bearing so that the case presses together easier. It's still, a fairly tight fit, so I'm not worried about that bearing at all. I just don't need tons of force to press it together. I think that's ridiculous. That's how you break stuff. So we'll finish up and put some fluid in it and call her a day. All right, it's all done. I've tested all the gears. Everything seems to be working properly. I have the new bearing and input shaft seal in there. Yeah, that was a whole lot of effort over a simple mistake. I'm trying to remove the old input seal using a drill bit. Kind of messed up this bearing, so it's a good thing we changed it. Once I got it out of there and popped this this cover off, you could see just how badly the cage and race got damaged. This took me 12 hours roughly. Probably be a little bit quicker next time, but I imagine I'll be changing synchros or gears or doing something else in there. So this job would cost you roughly about $600 with me. And I'm here in the Okanagan, not too far away from Area 27. Let me know.